Welcome to the Mayor's Show. You know, I always tell you we have a great show in store for you. Well, this is it. This is our 325th birthday. And I think one of the best kept secrets in Bensalem is Concord Park. My goodness gracious, Concord Park is, I think, correct me, 63 years old?
63,
Correct.
yes.
63-year-old. Well, you're going to hear the history today because we have the folks that were parents, bought the homes there, and there's some, I know you still live there. I don't know, do you still live there?
No, I live in Bensalem, but not
In
Concord Park.
Bensalem.
And I'm in another section of
In
Bucks
another
County. but
section of Bucks County. Well, let me introduce our guests
still.
first. I think a lot of people know my guest to my left is Joyce Hadley. Joyce has been here, and a lot of you will remember her brother George, who taught at the high school for many years, and what a great guy he was in your
Thank you,
family.
Mr.
And
Mayor.
we're so lucky to have you here today because I know you have a lot to talk
Thank
about.
you for inviting
And to my immediate right is Karen Miles. Millis?
Karen Swartzbeck Millis, yes.
Millis.
Great.
Swartzbeck Millis. And we'll get to the Swartzbeck, I'll know a little later because that's historical and what we're going to
Thank
talk
you.
about. And all the way to my far right, we have Lawrence Swan. So we're here today to give you the history of Concord Park. And if you don't know where Concord Park is, it's up, I know most of you think of Lincolnia. It's right next to that. That was an open area that they built in 1954, I believe they started. I remember that was farmland, and Lincolnia was certainly scattered small bungalows back in my day when I was a young man. And today, that's in the same area up there. But Concord Park was built separately. And I'm going to start by having my dear friend, you talk about how it got started, Joy, because you're really bringing it to our attention now. You were at our day at the Groudon Mansion,
Correct.
where we really, and the people, they didn't realize Concord Park. They just didn't realize it, the historical significance of that in Bensalem. So I'm going to let you start out and talk a little bit about it and some of the history.
All right. Well, first of all, I'd like to thank you, Mr. Mayor, for allowing us, the Concord Park Project Committee. And I also want to mention there were actually 5 of us who were involved with this project. 2 of our committee members could not be with us today because one, who is Natalie Thomas, lives in Maryland, and the other, Brenda Hall Carter, lives in Atlanta, Georgia. But we are very happy to have this
Can I interrupt you for a minute?
Yes.
Were they up for the?
No, they were not able to come.
Oh, they weren't there. Okay, because I
Okay.
met some other. I didn't. Okay.
Okay. So how this project came about, and we're very grateful to have the opportunity to talk about Concord Park, is because I'm a member of the Historical Society of Bensalem Township, and the treasurer, Sally Sandusky, asked me, she said that you and she were talking about what could we do to celebrate the 325 years of Bensalem Township. And I immediately thought about Concord Park because we are all so grateful to have had the experience of growing up there, number one. And number 2, not many people really know about the true history of Concord Park, which is just wonderful. Morris Milgram was the developer for Concord Park. And he was a man before his times. He was really a pioneer in the aspect of forming the first intentionally planned integrated community in the United States.
That's really something. I mean, you would think that that would have been 300 years ago, right? We're talking about 64 years ago. Incredible. In the whole United States, this was the first.
The first pre-planned, intentionally planned community in the United States. And how it came about was Morris Milgram in 1934. He started out with his father-in-law to learn how to build. And so for a couple of years, about 4 years, it took him to learn how to build and so forth, to learn the trade. And his father-in-law and all the investors at that time promised him that one day when he decided to develop that they would assist him. But it didn't quite pan out to be that way. Back in the early 50s and even before, housing for minorities and African Americans was just about non-existent, and that's why the term ghettos came about, because African Americans often had to live in just their remote areas. So when Morris Milgram decided in 1954 that he was going to break away from that mold, and he wanted to build houses for minorities and whites to have a wonderful, integrated, diverse community for everyone. So he had a lot of pressure and a lot of hardship getting money, getting funding for that. Now, Morris, by birthright, was a Jewish person, but he became Quaker later in his life. So he befriended a lot of Quaker people.
One of his partners, Otto?
Yes, George Otto
Yeah.
was a Quaker. And George Otto at the time was already a builder in Bucks County. So he teamed up with George Otto. He also was able to get several white and black investors to invest in the building of Concord Park, which was just wonderful. So he did break ground in 1954, and he had to go to some New York banks because the banks here in Pennsylvania would not lend money to him for Concord Park once they heard that it was going to be an integrated community. But he ventured out, and Concord Park, which is, as you mentioned, is right next to the Lincolnia area. And Lincolnia has its own historical aspect, as it was predominantly an African American community.
Exactly.
Yes. And Concord Park used to be spinach fields. That's what it used to be. So for those who don't know where Concord Park is located, it's just west of Street Road and Old Lincoln Highway. It's right across from the Roosevelt Cemetery there. And so Morris built 139 homes. There were two styles. One was called the Arizona, which was $11,990, and the other was called the California. And the difference being one style had 3 bedrooms, the other style had 4 bedrooms and like a little living room and another private little bathroom back there. And so it was quite wonderful growing up there. I mean, it was a marvelous experience, and I am indebted to my parents for having the foresight and the opportunity to purchase there, because it was an invaluable experience for all of us, because we grew up in an atmosphere of loving and appreciating all ethnicities. We could walk into, and there were many in Concord Park, and we valued, because we would walk into anyone's house and, what are you having for dinner? We would just, as kids, we'd just sit down there and have dinner with them. And the parents wouldn't mind.
Real quick, I'm going to switch to somebody, but tell them about the smelly cheese.
Oh, yes. Okay.
That's a great read. It really is.
Okay. Immediately across from my house was a German family, the last name of Canuck. And I used to play with their daughter named Gabriela in German, that's how they pronounce it. So Lindbergher cheese, of which I didn't know anything about Lindbergher cheese, but Mrs. Canuck, she served it, and I'll never forget the smell of it. But I ate it because my parents told me to appreciate everything, and that's how you learn, because even though you don't understand it, when you taste it, you get an appreciation. And also with down comforters, the true German down comforters, we used to go over there for pajama parties, and I slept under the down comforters, and I thought it was just marvelous.
I'll never forget that. That's a read. I hope everybody, we got to promote how we're going to read about it. Laurie, tell us a little bit now. We've got a little bit of history of it. Tell me a little about your part of there, and how, you enjoyed the fruits of what happened
Yeah,
there.
absolutely. I was born there and lived there till I was 10, and we moved to Warminster just because the house got small. But I grew up in a neighborhood where the color of your skin literally did not matter. And that's the value that was seated inside of me from the very beginning. Now, I knew there was an outside world out there that wasn't quite the same as our own little microcosm. But within Concord Park, I knew that I could trust that my neighbors shared the same values. And as a child, I didn't think anything of it. I mean, now when I look back on what the experience I had, I realize how valuable it was. But as a child, you just kind of accept things that way. So we all played together out in the street. Like Joyce said, if you fell down and skinned your knee, a neighbor might be the one who takes you in their house and put the Band-Aid on it. And when you go home that night, your mom, didn't think twice about it, because the saying, it takes a village. I mean, it really, we were all there together. There were babysitting clubs and block parties and dinner clubs and all kinds of community activities.
Not to interrupt you, but that's something we don't see today anymore. When we did the Tricentennial, when I chaired that many years ago, that's 25 years ago, 27 when we started that. We gave soda, hot dogs, and clothes off the roads for any neighborhood that would have a block where they would know their neighbors. Because today a lot of neighbors don't know their neighbors. They're out working. Mom and dad's out working, and they really don't know. I didn't want to interrupt you, but that's something
a lot of what we
I think
experienced
was a big value.
part of the 1950s, what was going on in communities, because the suburban tract housing developments were just coming in. So it was a combination of that era as well as the purpose of our neighborhood.
Yeah, well, I think we're missing something there, because they used to do it. I think it came out of the cities used to do that, But
Oh, yes.
but it's up to you now to carry on what we're talking about.
Oh,
here.
yes.
And don't forget,
yes.
anybody wants to just jump in.
Of
So
course.
Karen,
Yeah,
give
so
us a
my
little
father, Warren Swartzbeck, was the office manager for Morris Milgram during those initial years of the building and early sales. And he and my mom just wanted to come, they wanted to heal the divides of society through their message of how they lived their life. So finding Concord Park was something they worked for.
Well, did you
the
live
ideals
there
were very
through him
dear
being
to them.
manager, or was it after your dad?
So
left?
my parents purchased a house there, as well as
As well as
managing
manage-
the
okay.
sales. And I was born into that community and lived there throughout until I left for college.
Okay. Did you go to Bensalem?
So I did attend Bensalem High
Bensalem?
School.
Good.
Yes, graduate in 1975, and
God, you're so
yeah, I
young.
have lots of fond memories of growing up there, and also we for this memory project, we sent out questionnaires. Natalie Thomas and others, as a committee, we put together a questionnaire, and we got responses from probably 40 of our peers who grew up there as to how did Concord Park shape your decisions in your adult life? And unanimously, the reply is, I feel comfortable with diversity. I feel a sense of excitement when I see people who are different from me. So there's an openness of heart that is very timely in this day and age that we need to remind ourselves of.
Well,
And we feel such a gratitude to our parents who structured that foundation for us.
Yeah, and to me, it lives today what we're trying to promote in Bensalem with Unity Week.
Yes.
I mean,
Yes.
Martin Luther King's birthday, we start on that Monday. We do 8 or 9 churches twice a day. We go to different, and everyone is, no matter who it is welcome there. And something that I've seen out of this for the last, since we started this, is a lot of people from out of town come to this, to what we do here, but nobody does it. Nobody else, kind of sees what we're doing and copycat or doing. And I don't understand that, because you're at all of them. I'm sure you've been to them.
Yes.
They're just incredible moments and teaching moments of learning.
Yes.
And how we all, we're all in this together. It's not particularly one. Go ahead.
Yes,
Joyce.
I think that Unity Week is a marvelous example of the diversity that we know about. So it's marvelous that that is occurring now. But I just want to piggyback on something that Karen was mentioning, because I brought a few examples here. Warren Swartzbeck, Karen's father,
Yes,
was
see
the
that. I
salesperson for my parents. And I have here a document. I don't know if you can see this. This is a deposit slip here where my parents put down $3,400. This is January 18th, 1956. Okay.
That is the original down payment, signed by your dad, and certainly your dad or mom. I don't know who.
My mother and father. yes.
Mother and father's on there.
Received
Yep.
from Mr. and Mrs.
Yep,
George
yep.
Headley.
And here is the.
Agreement of sale. with my father's-
These are originals. This is not something that was copied, but just look at that. She's kept these all these years. You guys don't have them, do you? The originals?
We don't, but I just want to say that, behind that paperwork is an incredible courage
Yes.
That's right.
of, these
Good
people
point.
who were
I'm still
forging
going
forward.
through my mom's stuff. I might have some. I haven't gone through all of her things yet.
Because
That's
there was
okay.
such adversity to this kind of thinking and this kind of living.
Yes.
And the people that put their signatures down and bought those houses were pioneers.
Yep. Well,
Pioneers.
I mean, I never realized it when it's first intentionally integrated housing in America. We're
In
not
the
talking
United
about
States.
Bucks County.
Right.
We're talking about America.
And I also want to mention some other points about Morris Milgram, speaking of his courage. In order for the community to be diverse, he had to have a 55-45 split, meaning that he had to get
Oh, I read that.
55% white individuals and 45% black. Now, keep in mind, during those times, it was very difficult to get whites to want to move into an integrated community, so there had to be some incentive. And that was the only way that Morris could get, them to do that. There were other communities that were being built all around in the Bucks County area.
Levittown, right?
Levittown, and if you were a minority, you could not move in there. So for African Americans, as soon as they learned that they could move into a community that was going to be diverse, this was an absolutely wonderful thing. And I want to mention here that Morris Milgram has written a book. It's called Good Neighborhood. It talks
That's
all
it.
about
That's it. You got it.
Concord Park and his other developments, because he went on to build a development in Greenbelt Knoll in Philadelphia, which is not too far from Nazareth Hospital. He built a development in Princeton, New Jersey, also one in Newtown, and several other states. And one thing that really encouraged him to want to build.
Were they all integrated, by the way?
Yes.
Every one of his
Yes.
projects?
Yes, going forward,
Wow.
yes. And he was so inspired by the writings of a lawyer who was also a poet by the name of Pauli Murray. And I'd just like to read just one little part
Go.
of, this is Morris Milgram in the book. I may not have reached my decision to pioneer as a private developer of integrated housing had it not been for the noted lawyer and poet Pauli Murray. After repeatedly reading her epic poem, Dark Testament, to the audiences, I finally realized that the following lines about the sons of slave traders told us that the ghetto's purpose is to preserve the unfreedom blacks suffered under slavery. And here's just part of that poem. Traders still trade in double talk, though they've swapped the selling block for ghetto and gun. And that inspired him to really make the move, and he was very courageous to do so, to start Concord Park.
Yeah. I mean, as long as I've been here, honestly, I mean it sincerely, I never knew the real history of Concord Park. And I am so delighted that you're bringing this out. And I know Historical Society is so happy that they could get this. The day of our 320th at Groudon, I couldn't believe that people were going over there to try to understand this. I mean, people just couldn't realize it. They were all from Bensalem and Concord Park. They were going like
Right,
that.
right.
And we're on the map now.
Yeah.
No question about it. We're on the map with Concord Park and realize, because Bensalem was made up of all small communities. I mean, Eddington, Treebos, Andalusia, Cornwall,
Belmont Hills. I
Belmont. Yeah,
remember.
they were all small, when I was a kid, I used to be able to hunt from our farm on the river. You could almost clear the Treebos behind little developments. There was all farms.
Right.
And you said it was a spinach farm. I don't remember what was planted there, but I remember it was open space. And we love spinach too, by the way. We grew a lot of that. But anybody want to kick in here? Come on, we want to talk a
I
little
just
bit.
think it's incredibly inspiring that young people today are interested in this history, because of course we know that it's a divisive culture that we're living in currently, so we need to find examples of how that was
Some
turned
people
around.
make it decisive. Otherwise, I think I think my view of this, 90% of the people understand. We're all in it together. We're all. It really is a minority of people that cause the problems.
I think
in
there's
my
a
heart of
lot of
hearts, I believe
divisiveness coming at us in the news,
Yeah,
which
yeah.
unfortunately can put us on edge and make us feel
Absolutely.
less confident about
Absolutely.
our neighbors. So history like this shows us
Yeah.
throughout time there have been efforts, successful efforts,
look at us, we're
to
smiling
get
about it.
everyone
Happy
to
times,
get
guys.
along. And it just isn't that complicated. We had at Pennswood Village years ago, we had a panel. It's a Quaker-run retirement community in Newtown.
Okay.
And during Black History Month, they did a panel. And every single one of us kids, we were the third night, talked about how we didn't care. We just played with each other, and we were best friends, and Girl Scout troops and campfire girls and things at the church, and Christmas.
That's why, seriously.
Nobody cared about
Mark,
the differences.
seriously, come on. Most of it's a minority of people that cause the problems. It really is.
But I think
Because-
one of the values of growing up in an integrated community is you see this firsthand, and if anything comes up, it gets confronted. When we surround ourselves only with people who are very much like us,
Right.
we aren't always aware of all the differences out there, and we're not always aware of what we also have in common.
Right.
And how do we talk about our
Yeah.
differences? You know, is it too sensitive? Is it something that we can? I'm not afraid to talk about differences with
I'm
anyone.
not either. Look, I had to tell you the truth. My beliefs came from my family, and my beliefs are, I'm a Christian. Now, I'm not saying everybody has to be a Christian. I'm just talking about myself. And my teachings were totally different with anything you're talking about. We were people. I mean, we we're Italians, but we didn't separate that for Germans, Irish, African Americans. It was all, you know what I'm saying?
But remember, Concord Park was founded in the 1950s.
Yeah,
The civil
that's-
rights movement came in the 60s.
Yeah, you're right.
Because something my mother told me, I heard a couple times growing up, the Ku Klux Klan marched through Concord Park and burned some
Oh,
crosses.
wow.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, they
Yeah,
did.
and I didn't hear about this till many years later.
Yes.
But
Yes.
yes,
They
there
did.
was
Wow.
resistance. We were called
Oh, yes.
Checkerboard Square. Concord Park was called communism.
Because of our liberal,
Right.
our liberal.
We were kind of ahead of our
aspirations.
time.
We were.
Yeah.
We were.
Yeah.
And I also want to point out something that the parents of Concord Park were very unique in that we had such wonderful experience. For example, we were exposed to an artist, Henry B. Jones, who later years had an exhibit at the Philadelphia Museum of Art. He was an artist, and every Christmas he would hang on his garage door a huge portrait of something historical, like the Magi or something pertaining to Christmas. All of us kids would go over there, and we would sing Christmas carols and wait for him to shine that light on that. And we'd all go around the community, and we would go to each person's house singing Christmas carols. And at the end, someone would have hot chocolate for us to come in. So, and then Lauren's mother, for example, started the kindergarten
Community kindergarten.
in Bensalem Township. She
Get outta
started.
here.
Correct.
Lauren's
At our
mother.
schools?
Yes,
Yes.
that is correct.
Wow.
Because there wasn't one, and she was an educator, a teacher, and and all the many parents worked on it, but she was one of the instrumental founders.
You know, I want to touch on something while we're speaking about this, something that we did, and I'm so proud of. One of is Bensalem AV Church. That was literally falling down to history. It's 199 years old this year. Next year it's 200th birthday, and the people in the community, all the volunteers and everything, not a tax dollar went into that. That was all done for the community, and it's a magnificent little DMA
It is.
church. I know
Lovely.
you were there,
It's
and it's
lovely.
all done now. It's absolutely incredible the people that donated money to fix that little church, and that was Underground Railroad. So, our history. So when we're talking about Concord Park, I want to separate that, not separate it, but let you know that this is modern history. We're talking in the 50s here that Concord Park was built. So proud of all of you for doing this. And how did you get the membership? Like, you got 5 board members. How did that happen?
Well, when I got the call from Sally, and then she said that you were interested, and then we just kind of called different people saying, hey, do you want to be on this? So for 8 weeks, we worked on this project for 8 weeks
Yeah.
by telephone. All
Wow,
all
okay,
by
that's how you got
conference
it. Yeah,
call.
we wanted to
Yeah.
do, so we told Sally, my goodness, we have a, and coming up that day made it, I mean, up at the mansion, because people were so surprised. Because we got some calls on it, they didn't realize Concord Park, yeah.
And I just want to mention something else that
Go
people
ahead.
may not know about the library system. Bensalem, there was no Bensalem library at the time, but our parents had a library. Each of our homes, we would take turns, and the Bucks County Free Library would bring a bus down and deposit books, and each family would have it for, was it 2 weeks at a time, I think? 2 weeks at a time.
yes.
And you would come into whose ever home the library was in, you would go into their house, and you would take out a book and sign out your book, and you'd have to return it, and then it would go to the next house, and the next house, and the next house.
Unbelievable.
Right. We also put in our own playground.
Yes.
And I remember my dad helped with that because he happens to be an architect, so he knew about zoning laws. And that's how a lot of the parents contributed any talents they had to really build this community up. And I remember when I moved to Warminster, I had sort of taken it all for granted because, again, as a child, when you're born into something, you just assume this is the way the world is. This is the
Sure,
way life
sure,
is. I
sure.
was so fortunate to have been born
Yeah.
in Concord Park. I
Well,
really
I'm
feel
going to
that way.
give you next to the last word. So, anything you want to say now to culminate what we've been talking about?
I personally love diversity and multiculturalism, and I believe that happened because I was born in Concord Park. In fact, I happen to be a nutritionist, and one of my specialties is cultural foodways, looking at how people from their heritage, their nationality, their ethnicity may continue with a legacy of food. And we used to have
delicious.
ethnic potlucks in the
did.
neighborhood.
Yes, we did.
Yeah.
Yes.
We had-
Karen, you're next
Very
to the
good.
next Elise word.
Oh my goodness. Well, I just want to say to anyone who may be listening that there's a wonderful example of putting your ideals into practice, and don't be discouraged. You know that we can get along,
Oh,
all of us, and can celebrate our diversity and understand how we're unified as people too.
Well, I'm giving you absolutely the last word. Joyce?
Well, I just want to mention that diversity is the spice of life. And I am so fortunate in that whomever I meet in life, I love the person for whom they are, for what they can give to this wonderful country. And I think if all of us take that into perspective and reach out and really get to know the other side, the other person, other ethnicities, because the United States is a fabric of all these wonderful people that we have here, and we know that best as the children of Concord Park.
Well, I just want to, it's an honor to have you here today. I know two of the board members, but all of the people from Concord Park that exist today. It's a beautiful neighborhood. I don't know how to thank you enough
Thank
for
you.
bringing
Thank
it
you for having
to
us.
our
We
attention.
appreciate it.
To bring it to our attention on something that's so historical. That and Sally and the rest of the people, Sally Sandusky, the people over at the society, I know how proud they are now that they have all this information, and it's documented. And I told you before, I hope that some of this can go in our library to where people can pick it up. I'm sure this is available. His
This
book.
is another book. Yeah. This is Metropolitan Philadelphia, which talks about the structure of the Concord Park homes. They came out and took a look at that. There's also two other books that people may be interested in. It's called Traveling Through Bensalem. It can be found in the Historical Society. It's in the 1692 through 1984 booklet. There's also another book called The Price of Paradise, The Cost of Inequality and a Vision for More Equity by David Dante Trout. And that one has Alice Swan and Chris Thomas in that book talking about Concord Park. So there are a lot of books out there for you to get.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
You want more information? You can certainly call here at the township. You're going to get information on the screen. Obviously, everybody was here, their names. And get in touch with any of the three here with me today, or call us at the office. We'll make sure that they get.
We're on Facebook too. We have a group and a
Well,
page.
why don't you say,
Concord Park Trevos, PA.
There you
on
go.
Facebook, a group.
And I'm sure he's going to have that on there.
Right.
I'm sure Darren will put that on the screen. Again, God bless you. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank
An
you.
honor to
Sure.
be with you guys.
Thank you
My
so
dear
much.
friend,
Thank
God
you.
bless you. Until next time, everybody, God bless.